Good morning. If we haven't met before, my name is Lucy. I'm now on the leadership team and I am going to be bringing us a message from God's Word this morning. And over the last 4 months, we've been journeying through the book of John, looking at what it means to have life in Jesus' name. And this all comes from the fact that John, at the end of chapter 20 of his gospel, writes this: "These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name." And I don't know about you, but if I was writing an account of the life of Jesus, that feels like a pretty nice place to end it, right? It's a lovely little summary of what you've been trying to achieve and the purpose of the book that you've written. But John goes on to write one more chapter, because Jesus isn't done, and so John isn't quite done either. This is all off the back of Easter. Easter has happened. Jesus has been arrested, he's died, he's risen again, and he's appeared to people. And then last week, Will looked at how the presence of Jesus changes everything. His disciples are back fishing in their disappointment and their everyday. And they've been fishing all night, so we can question on how good fishermen they actually might be. But they haven't caught anything. When Jesus says, or that they don't know it's Jesus, a man from the shore calls, "Throw your net on the other side." And they do. And they end up encountering Jesus with a miraculous catch of fish as well. Peter, one of the disciples, realizes it's Jesus, jumps out the boat and runs to him. And then Jesus says what I think could be argued to be one of the best verses in the Bible. In John 21, verse 12, Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." And I think that's great. And they have brunch on the beach, and then we read this conversation between Peter and Jesus, and that's our passage for today. So if you've got a Bible, switch it on, open it up. We're going to be reading from John 21, starting at verse 15. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." Again, Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" He answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." The third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." Is there a smell that instantly transports you back to a specific moment or place? Good or bad, but when you smell it, you are right back to where you first smelled that smell. The first thing that comes to mind for me is walking through the door of our house after normally a long day at school, and then often on days where we then spent hours at the swimming pool. And there were 3 of us, so you couldn't all have swimming lessons at the same time. There was like one after another. So we'd spend hours at school, then hours at the swimming pool. And I actually hate the swimming pool, so it was quite a traumatic experience for me. And you'd walk through the door of the house, and this smell would hit you. And it can only mean one thing. The slow cooker is on, and it's casserole for tea. And as an adult, I quite like casserole. But as a child, there was no worse way to end an already long day than chicken casserole. And any time I smell this, like a similar smell to this chicken casserole, I'm instantly transported back to being slightly force-fed it as a child. And for Peter, as he jumps out this boat and runs to the beach, I wonder if there's a smell there for him that brings back memories too. Before this conversation between Peter and Jesus, John tells us that Jesus is cooking fish, breakfast, over a charcoal fire. And I quite like the smell of a fire or a bonfire or a barbecue, but it has quite a distinctive smell. And I wonder if for Peter, it brings back memories that he would actually rather not relive. To understand what is going on for Peter, we need to go back a little bit to the build-up of Jesus' death. During his final meal with his disciples, Peter proudly declares that he is prepared to lay his life down for Jesus, that nothing will stop him doing that. And instead of going, "That's great, thanks, Pete," Jesus says, "You will actually disown me 3 times. Ouch. And then as Jesus is arrested, Peter gets a little bit sword happy and cuts off the ear of a guard, which Jesus heals, and then he follows an arrested Jesus to the high priest's courtyard. And while Jesus is being questioned and abused, Peter denies knowing Jesus on 3 separate occasions. And John 18 sets the scene for us. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood round a fire that they had made to keep warm. Peter was also standing there with them, warming himself. The man who said he would never leave has chopped off an ear, then infamously denied Jesus 3 times. Only twice in the Gospel of John does he tell us that there's a fire present. At the charcoal fire where Peter denies Jesus, and now at breakfast on the beach. I wonder how Peter felt as he smelt that smoke. He knows, I've blown it. What on earth am I going to say to him? And Peter and Jesus have met since the resurrection, but it seems like the time has come for them to talk about what has happened. I wonder what he's expecting Jesus to say or do. If you were Jesus, what would you say or do? And I don't know for certain, but I reckon he's full of shame. And I reckon we can sometimes relate to that feeling of we've let someone down. To Peter, the smell of this fire reeks of shame. Have you ever been there? Swore you would or you wouldn't, and then you did. That feeling of, oh, I've blown it. They know. What on earth am I going to say or do? Just wanting the ground to swallow you up, wishing you could go back and change what you did or said. Because Peter's failure is also our failure. We all deny, disown, and let each other down. And we can all let Jesus down too. Paul writes it like this in Romans: "For what I want to do, I do not do, and what I hate to do, I do." In big ways and little ways, we all get things wrong. And Peter's failure here might seem pretty catastrophic to him. And it's important quickly to note that shame is different from guilt. Guilt at times can be helpful. And although our world is messy, I think it would be a much worse place if guilt didn't exist. Guilt tells us that we've done something bad that might need addressing. But where guilt says I did something bad, shame says I am something bad. It speaks to our worth. I am bad or unworthy of love or attention or kindness. It says there's something wrong with us. What will they think of me? Guilt focuses more on a specific event or action. Shame speaks to our identity, our sense of who we are. It's like when you meet someone for the 2nd or 3rd time and you're there and you know their name and you can't quite remember. You might feel guilty about that. But shame says I can actually never talk to them again. They must think that I am an awful person, and actually they probably never want to talk to me again. It's heavy and messy and complicated, and it has the power to shape our thoughts and actions, infiltrating everything, overshadowing things. And we all have different ways of responding to shame. What do we do when we feel like Peter? Peter's gone back to fishing, back to what he knows. Shame might cause us to hide away from people, from situations that mean something might happen again. Or we might withdraw. Surely God actually doesn't want to see us. So we withdraw first before they get a chance. We might try and get as busy as we can, just not have time, run away from those feelings. We might try and numb it out with distractions and just one more episode. Or we might even deny that we feel that way entirely. And although in the short term, these ways of coping with shame can be helpful, they don't restore us from the shame. Peter went back to fishing. The fire brought everything back, but Jesus doesn't leave him there. So what do we do when we find ourselves in front of Jesus with shame? How does Jesus respond to Peter's shame? And how does he respond to ours? Jesus could have left. I probably would have. Well, you're out. You're done. When I needed you most, you let me down. But he doesn't leave. He loves. He restores. He steps into Peter's shame and his everyday. He meets him where he is at, and that's where restoration happens. This is one of the reasons why John's gospel doesn't end with that nice verse at the end of verse 20. It's one of the things Jesus has to do before he goes back to heaven. He needs to show Peter that failure is not final. He wants to show us that failure is not final. Jesus refused to let shame have the final word. And actually, Jesus has never been put off by shame. Throughout John's gospel and the other gospels, we read about him encountering and loving and moving towards people whose society lumped shame on. He spent time with lepers, people who were deemed unclean, who had to walk along the street declaring that they were unclean. He sat with and chatted with a bleeding woman, prostitutes, Gentiles and tax collectors, people that society said, oh, they can stay over there. He moved towards them in their shame, and in its place, he brought them honor and love. And then he died on a cross, a method of execution designed to be as shameful as possible. He himself was shamed, spat on, struck, stripped naked, verbally and physically abused. But Hebrews 12 tells us this: for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. He scorned the shame the cross brought, saw it as worthless and not even worth consideration for the joy that was set before him. Peter's and our restoration. He who knew no shame became shamed for us. He knows what it's like to feel shame. And he took it upon himself in order that we might be restored. Shame did not and still does not have the final word. Jesus does. And Jesus' heart for us is this restoration from shame. Shame is not God's heart for us. Restoration is. The cross means that Jesus brings this restoration in our shame, and our failures are not final. And he restores in full. 3 times he asks Peter the same question. Simon, son of John, do you love me? 1 time for every denial. Total forgiveness and restoration after total denial. This public restoration of Peter after his public denial. Peter is restored in full. And when I moved to York from Brighton, to be honest with you, I didn't really want to. It was really emotional, lots of sadness, lots of confusion and questions. And I processed that, and that was good. And I got to a place where I was happy being in York. But then recently, I've discovered that somewhere along the line, some shame had snuck in there too, over how I felt, over how I acted, how I reacted. Oh, goodness me, how pathetic. And I processed and chatted it, and it felt kind of like restoration, but if I'm honest, it was always just kind of still there in the back of my head. This little voice of shame speaking to my identity. And then a few weeks ago, I made a decision that felt like God was all over it, that meant that I chose to stay in York for at least another year. And it felt like full restoration. It wasn't just like a little bit of restoration. Through this process, it felt like Jesus had restored in full. The shame just didn't have the same power anymore. And it's this full restoration that Jesus wants to bring us. Jesus' love for Peter means he doesn't ignore what has gone on. He gently brings Peter back to the place, back to that fire, and says, bring it to me. Let me restore it. And he does the same for us. He says, bring it to me. It's safe with me. Let me restore it. Jesus' restoration of shame means that we are not the sum of our accomplishments, good, bad, or ugly. Shame leaves us stuck, tells us we are the sum of what we've done. Jesus says you are far more than the best or the worst thing that you have ever done. Do you feel like you've blown it? Where are you carrying shame? Do you realize that Jesus wants to restore it? It's not just something he has to do or should do. He wants to restore it. And this restoration is more than just surface level, restoring this sort of friendship between Peter and Jesus. It goes deeper too. It affects Peter's heart. And actually it creates this honesty between Peter and Jesus. Previously, when we've read about Peter, he's come across as fairly prideful. He says, I will never leave you. The rest of them, they might, but I will never leave you. He's always sort of wanted to be the first and the best. But when we read the start of their conversation, Jesus asks him a question that says, do you love me more than these? And it feels like the Peter that we know and we read about, it feels like another opportunity for him to jump at and say, yes, I do. I love you more than these. But actually, Peter's honest. He says, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. But he doesn't compare himself to anybody else anymore. He is honest with Jesus about what he can and what he can't do. He says, yes, I love you, skipping out the bit about loving them more than the rest of the disciples. And actually, there's another layer of this honesty between Peter and Jesus that in the English we miss, but in the Greek, which it was originally written, we capture. There's actually two words used in this passage for the word love. Love is used a lot in this passage, and there's two different words for it. There's agape love, which is this unselfish, perfect, godly love. And there's philia love, which is this slightly lesser, more friendship, brotherly love. And the first two times that Jesus asks Peter, Simon, do you love me? He says, Simon, do you agape me? Simon, do you love me with this perfect, unselfish love? But Simon Peter replies with a different word. He says, yes, Lord, I love you with this lesser, brotherly friendship love. And two times that happens. Simon, do you love me with this perfect love? Yes, Lord, I love you with this slightly lesser love. Simon, do you love me with this perfect love? Yes, Lord, I love you with this slightly lesser love. And then the third time, it changes. Jesus says, Simon, do you love me with this philia love, this lesser friendship love? And it says that he was hurt, but he still replies, yes, Lord, I love you with that love. He's no longer trying to be the hero. He's no longer trying to be something he's not. This restoration has created an honesty between him and Jesus about what he can do and what he can't do. And the good news is that Jesus isn't put off by it. Jesus, in fact, already knows. And actually says, well, if you can't get this love, that's okay. Let's start where you are. Do you love me with this imperfect love? Yeah? Great. Let's start there. And he does the same for us. It is Christ's love that has restored Peter, not Peter's love for Christ. This is good news for us and for Peter. And it's the same for us. Where we can't do it, that's okay. We can be honest with Jesus about where we can't. There's times that I leave church or meeting with friends or a collective group and we've talked about something, it's like, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be better at that. This is how I'm going to do it. Yes, Jesus, I feel on fire for you. Let's go. And then Monday morning rolls around or the alarm goes off the next morning and I get halfway through my day and I'm like, oh, I forgot everything. I've just gone back into autopilot and nothing seems to be different. Or I read words in the Bible that feels like stuff that I should be able to do, or Jesus asks us to do. Love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Yeah, got it. Oh, I definitely don't. Don't worry about what you're going to eat or drink. Don't be anxious about anything. Oh, but if I'm honest, there's a lot of days that anxiety is a louder voice than Jesus. Forgive other people. Turn the other cheek. Oh, oh, that's really hard and I actually don't do it. I want to be right. I don't want to try and forgive someone. And if they've hurt me, I'm not going to let them hurt me again. We do it imperfectly. And Jesus isn't put off by this. And in fact, what he shows us when he's restoring Peter in honesty is that we can be honest with him. Jesus, I can't do it. And he says, that's okay. Let's start with where you are. Let's start with where you can. He meets us where we fail. And where we might expect shame, he brings love. Because he loves us with this perfect love, even when we love him with imperfect love. He's not put off by our imperfections. He knows them, and he meets us there. It's so easy to forget that it's his costly forgiveness, not our squeaky cleanness, that makes us eligible for brunch on the beach, makes it eligible to be called his children. God loved us before there was an us. That is what Easter is all about. He saw us from afar and loved us. And as he took on our shame and all the ways that we let him down on the cross, he was thinking about the joy set before him, our freedom, our closeness with God, and our restoration. Jesus restores Peter in full and in honesty. And he restores him with purpose. Jesus still wants to use us. He knows we'll get it wrong, and still he wants to use us. He's already factored that in. Each time this question and answer happens, Simon, do you love me? Yes, Lord, I love you. Jesus has a response, an instruction to essentially continue Jesus' work. There's this sheep imagery about sheep and lambs all the way through. Jesus, earlier in John's gospel, declared himself as the good shepherd. And so essentially what he's saying to Peter is, go and continue what I have started. And actually, this is further evidence, if Peter or we needed any, that Peter is forgiven and restored. Otherwise, I don't think Jesus would have trusted him with this task. Failure is not final. And resurrection, sometimes as we look at the Gospels, can feel like the end of the story. But John doesn't end his Gospel with resurrection, because resurrection is not the end of the story. It's just simply the beginning. John shows us that failure is not final and there is more to come. He restores Peter with purpose. Not demands to try and earn back his favor. You've let me down, so now you need to prove yourself. There's none of that. And it's why this restoration of relationship and love comes first. It's not, Peter, I want you to go and do this. It's like, Peter, do you love me? Because I love you. And once we've established that that love is there, then he sends him. And Jesus ends this conversation between them with a little bit of a cryptic description that John tells us is sort of foreshadowing Peter's death. And then Jesus says the words, follow me. And that sounds quite nice. It feels like it ends the passage off. But once again, there's probably another layer there for Peter. Because when Jesus first called Peter, he was fishing. And Luke tells us that Jesus got in the boat and they went out. And he said, throw your net on the other side. And then there was a miraculous catch of fish. Sounds a little bit familiar. And then Matthew tells us that in this same incident with the fish and the calling of Peter, Jesus says, follow me. Once again, there's echoes for Peter of things that have already happened between him and Jesus. In this case, when Jesus first called Peter, a miraculous catch of fish and the words, follow me. Peter is being recommissioned. Just as he was the first time, Jesus is doing it again. He says, I still choose you. I still love you. I still want you to follow me. And John tells us that there's 153 fish caught. And that sounds really random, and it doesn't seem to have any particular meaning. But I wonder if it's almost this, look at how many fish, more fish than you can dream of. That's what my love and my restoration looks like for you. And that's what his love and his restoration looks like for us too. And it says that this foreshadowing is foreshadowing Peter's own cross. where Peter denied Jesus to avoid going to his own cross the night that Jesus died, the very source of his shame, Jesus is saying that his cross is coming, and Peter will in fact lay his life down for Jesus. We have a God of second, of third, of fourth, of fifth, and on and on and on chances. Our failure is not final. Resurrection is not the end, it's the beginning. God still wants to use you. He still has a good plan for you. Have you counted yourself out? Jesus restores Peter from his shame in full, in honesty, and with purpose. And he does the same for us too. And although John ends his gospel here with John 21, and we're going to unpack the last few verses next week, this isn't the end of Peter's story. We read in Acts that at Pentecost, Peter preaches, the Holy Spirit comes and 3,000 people are baptized. He is feeding and tending the lambs just as Jesus asked him to do. And then from early church history, we know historically that about 34 years after this, Peter did die in Rome under Emperor Nero. And he followed Jesus to crucifixion and deemed it glorious. He, in fact, died head downwards, so he didn't count himself worthy enough to die in the same position as Jesus. He did follow Jesus. To our shame, hear Jesus' voice. Come to breakfast. Let me restore you in full. You can be honest with yourself and with me about where you can't do it. We can start there. Let me meet you there. And I still have and will always have good plans for you. Amen.